This is the Throstle Club with Norman Bartlam and Bob Downing.
Well, hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Throstle Club. It's the programme all about the long and illustrious history of West Bromwich Albion. Now, we're looking back on our history with emphasis on this particular month. So it's October events and happenings that we'll be focusing on, particularly today, among with other things as well. Now, alongside me, as always, is one of the Black Country's finest journalists. That's what it says here anyway. It's Bob Downing. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Norman. How are you?
Fine, thanks. And opposite me, twiddling his bits and pieces as always and keeping us on air.
I didn't know you'd noticed, Norman.
I wondered what you were doing over there. And if that's not enough, we've got our special studio guest sitting between us. It's a well-known Albion fan, Mark Whitehouse, who's better known as Snarka, and he's written a book of poems all about the Albion. So hello.
Hello, Norman.
Well, that was not very poetic, was it? I'm sure we'll have something. We'll rhyme as we go along, but of course poems don't have to rhyme, as people always say to us. So there's loads to talk about on this edition of the Throstle Club. So, straight away to our special guest then, Snarka. That's an unusual name to start with, so how did that come about?
Well, to be fair, a lot of people didn't know this until quite recently. When I was about 5 or 6 in junior school, infant school I think it was, we did poems by Lewis Carroll, and one of them was a nonsensical poem which was The Hunting of the Snark. Of course, you're only kids. My name being Mark, people just started saying, Mark, Snark, Mark, and it's just stuck, and I'm 62 now, and I've had it since I've been about 5 or 6 years of age.
Oh, well, I bet not many people knew that.
No, not till recently, like obviously like the wife did in that, but I never really told anybody until just recently. I mean, the clue's in the it's there in plain sight, really, why I do poems, you know.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's a fascinating start already. So, poems as well. I don't know what a typical poet looks like, but people, if you know what I mean, wouldn't look at you and automatically think you're a poet.
What are you trying to say, no? That's a good start, isn't it? I've only been here 5 minutes.
Come on the Throssles and be insulted.
But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Yeah. So
yeah, it's true. Yeah. It's true, mate. To be fair, and you're touching on that does actually resonate with me, because at the end of the day, I kept this secret for a very long time. Yeah. Because I went to quite a rough school on Friar Park in Wednesbury. At the time, it was actually in West Bromwich, but boundary changes stuck it into Wednesbury. And if I'd have said to people, oh, by the way, I do poems, especially some of my mates, I'd have been bullied rotten. So I kept it quiet for years and years and years. And basically through Facebook, and people are seeing the likes of Harry Taylor putting his poems on, I thought, I've got a few poems, I'll just put a couple on. I just tried a couple and everybody was saying how good there was. And it's just snowballed really from there.
Yeah, so much so that you've ended up doing a book.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about the book, and the money that you're going to raise on that is going to a good cause as well, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously I've got to, because obviously I've self-published this book, so once I've paid for everything, I've already made a donation to the Albion Foundation. And this next lot, because I've sold out to the books that I originally had, and I've had to have a new delivery which came yesterday, and the books on there, I'm going to make a donation off there through Graham Williams, who's done a foreword for it for me. He's given me some pictures signed, and every picture I get with a book, I'll go to the memorial gardens up the Albion. So basically the book is about my life just following West Bromwich Albion throughout the years, and I think there's another book like it that is actually done in verse and not like just somebody's I went there, I put it in verse. And as you said, my poems are very simplistic. I ain't a Byron or a Shakespeare. You know what I mean? If you look, I like Lewis Carroll poems, they do rhyme, they're story. I like to call them odes because mine tell stories. They've got a beginning, a middle and an end.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, we'll no doubt get round to getting you to recite some of them a bit later in the programme, if you don't mind. That'd be great. But first of all, I think Bob, we'd ought to start really with reflecting on Ian Hamilton with his sad demise last month and his funeral earlier this month. And great player in the 92-93 season.
Yeah, I mean, at that time, I wasn't covering Albion then. I'd gone on to the other sort of part of my life, and I was doing horse racing. But I'd always kept affection for the Albion because of supporting them as a lad when I started, and then covering them for all that many years. And he was like the heartbeat of the team. You get the impression, that if anything was going wrong or something wasn't going quite right for him, give the ball to Hamilton. Yeah. So let him sort it, and he did, and I mean, it was very sad news when when you heard of his passing, and I thought the Millwall game when they all all that team were there, all that squad were there. I think that was absolutely wonderful, and of course on the day of his funeral, going past the Albion ground or going into the car park, going past the offices. I mean, it just typifies Albion fans. Really, and it probably typifies all football fans, because if they get a hero or they get a well-known player or somebody they know has put that badge on the shirt and they've really played for that badge and they've really played for that club, they do get a special affection, and Hamilton had a special affection with the Albion fans.
It was particularly, wasn't it, Snarka, that promotion challenge 92-93. Were you at Wembley that day?
Yeah. I was there in the upper gallery there that day because the tickets was hard to come by there so I had to get what I could at the time. So yeah, it was a great day.
Yep. Now, Ian Hamilton has also obviously got great memories of that, and I was lucky enough to be able to interview him a couple of years back. This was, and this is a little bit of what he told me now, and he started off talking about his admiration of Ozzy Ardiles.
Ozzy was amazing as a person, as a coach. Luckily, he had Keith Birkinshaw as well. The lads would say Ozzy was, I'll try my Argentinian, attack. And Keith Birkinshaw worked on the defensive side of things. And we played this diamond system, if you remember. And Darren was the holding man. And it was either me, Mickey Mellon, or, as you say, Kev Donovan playing. And then you had, obviously, Bob up the top end. And then when Andy Hunt come in as well. And it worked a treat. And we won games 5-1. And we lost games. I remember, was it Plymouth? Or we lost to Plymouth at home that season, 5-3.
You never forget about good times in your life, and 92-93 season for me was massive in my career. I joined Ozzy Ardiles, and it was a great season, ups and downs, but it culminated at Wembley, as we know, and to get promoted that way as well. Great night, great lads we had, great camaraderie for the Albion then. And for me, Swansea in the playoff final, we lost the first game 2-1 with Darryl Burgess nicking us a goal. And then I was fortunate enough to get the goal that got us to Wembley, which I'm probably remembered for if anybody recognised me for the Albion. So and Wembley was an amazing occasion. God knows how many Albion fans, and it was an amazing atmosphere as well. And I think on the day it's just the result. You just want to make sure that you get the result you want and get the Albion up, which we did. It weren't a great performance, but as we say, I think Nicky Reid was his best performance in an Albion shirt, and Kev Donovan, one of my best mates, scored. The fans were amazing, absolutely amazing, and we had a great evening after that, and it was all good. It was all good.
Black Country Xtra.
So there are some memories there from Ian Hamilton. Now, Snarky, this is a poem that's not in your book because your book was already been published,
Yeah,
but you've actually done a poem, haven't you,
Yeah.
related to Ian Hamilton?
Yeah, obviously, because of the sad demise of him, it's been done pretty quickly because I haven't really got the time. So, yeah, I've done this poem. If you want me to read it, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Ian Hamilton, us baggies sang his name. He gave everything on the pitch in every single game. Our dealers signed him from the Irons in 1992 without seeing him playing. That bit is really true. But Bacon sure he knew a player and Hammy was his man. He soon became a favourite of every Albion fan. A competitive midfielder, a general on the grass, got around the pitch and could certainly pick a pass. He chipped in with a goal or two, each game he gave his best. Part of our Wembley winners, proud of the Albion crest. 1997, our player of the year. Played with heart and passion, he never played with fear. 6 years he entertained us, then off to pastures new. But each still remained a baggy through and through. He had a long career and was always in the team. He got to live every schoolboy's dream. He is fondly remembered at our famous football club, always entertaining in hospitality or Hawthorne's hub. Albion fans we glad we saw him in his prime. Alas, his life it was cut short, he left before his time. When his game had finished, God called him up above. To family and his loved ones, we send them all our love.
Yeah, very good.
Very good.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
So, well done, mate. Now, we'll hear a bit more from you later in the programme.
Yeah, cool.
That's fine. We'll talk a bit about some of your family connections as well, because I know you've got a connection with some of these from
Me-
days gone by.
Yeah, my great granddad played for West Brom in the 1920 League champions, and my great uncle Bill played for the 1931 side. So I've got me great granddad's England cap. He played for England once during the war, which is not recognised by the Albion, but I've got his cap on my wall, so it's recognised by me. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, great.
And I've also got his appearance cap, which the Albion gave me. So yeah, I've got quite a few connections with the Albion. My aunt Lil used to look after the players at the time. Asa Hartford being a famous one she had for years and years. So yeah, I've got quite a few connections with it. It's more family than it is me family, to be fair.
Of course, there's so much more agony as well, maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, right. Let's move on a bit now. Albion recently had one of their best away wins in recent years, really, with that 4-0 thrashing of Preston North End at Deepdale. And after the game, a group of us, there's myself with Dean, George and Mick, we met up with a former Albion player who also used to play for Preston. And his name was John Thomas, better known as Johnny T. Johnny T from Wednesbury, actually, Billy.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he ran at some stage and with the family a market stall in Wednesbury Market. So there's a great chant used to go around, it's Johnny T from Wednesbury, etc. about his market stall, which we'll hear in a bit. And we met up with John Thomas because it's the anniversary this month of October in 1989 when he famously scored a hat-trick for West Bromwich Albion in a game at Bradford City in the League Cup. It was the second leg of a game. Albion were 3-1 down from the first leg, and his hat-trick helped Albion to win that day 5-3. And Albion went on to win on away goals because I think it was 6 apiece at the end of the game. So John Thomas went down in Albion history, that almost like a one-match wonder, if you like, although he got great family connections. And we started by talking about that game when he recalled Albion being 3-1 down from the first leg.
Well, we was getting beat, weren't we? If I remember rightly, 3-1 at the Hawthorns, like. So we had to go up there to get a good result and a few goals scored. Luckily enough, that night I got 3. I think if I remember rightly, was it 5-3 the score, like. So we went into extra time, but we went through on away goals.
Yeah. But for you, a local lad to score a hat-trick.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big thing for me just signing the club. Like, you know, it's something that local lad, like, you know, you want to play for your local team, and signing for the Albion was brilliant for me. Like, you know, big, you know, Big Sam was there, and he put a word in for me. Brian Talbot was the manager at the time. The transfer had to go to Tribune. I think, if I remember rightly, Albion offered 5,000 and Bolton wanted 125. But it was a dream going back to my hometown club, like, you know.
Yeah.
I said I used to be on the Brummy Road shouting for Jeff Astle, Tony Brown, you know, all them type of players. Alistair Robertson, Ali Brown, all them, like, you know, the players who I remember, like, you know, growing up as a kid, like, you know, it was a sort of 79 bus or 78 bus from Wednesbury up to drop us outside the back of the Brummy Road, it was called, really, yeah. So that was a dream coming back home.
Yeah.
You know, playing for my hometown
so
club,
it's probably your boyhood dream, wasn't it, to play for your local club?
Well, it is growing up, yeah, definitely. You dream first of all to be a professional footballer and then playing for your hometown club. And luckily enough, I was lucky enough to play for the club, even though it was towards the end of my career. Like, you know, it was a dream come true. Like, you're playing for them. I think, if I remember right, I think it was about 18, 19 games or something like that. As for, you know, definitely start, I think it was very, you know, probably about 6 or 8 or something, like the rest was subs, I think.
Yeah. So what's it like being on the pitch? You can hear fans chanting your name.
Oh, it's brilliant. You know, I don't know what other players think about it, but it's fantastic, yeah. A big buzz, like, you know, lifts you as a player, but it also lifts the team. Like, you know, when the fans get behind the team, it lifts them brilliantly, like, you know, so no team supporters want to stop, you know, sort of cheering for the team. Like, you know, it's a great feeling. You know, I've been to the game today, the 4-0 at Preston, and you can hear the West Brom fans behind the goals to my left, like, and it was a massive journey for them, really, because there's no trains and that, like, you know, and there must have been at least 2,000 of them there, which is a great following, considering, like, you know, I believe the M6 was very busy.
Car park as usual.
Yeah, I remember seeing Andy Johnson, is it? The lad who does the radio, and I've seen him come in, but it was 3:15. You know, so he's got stuck in the traffic. Probably they had to be there an hour before or something, like, you know.
Normally
it just shows how bad the traffic was.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a quick word about your career after you left the Albion and what you do now, or what you did after football.
Well, after I left the Albion, I signed back for Preston, which I loved it at Preston. Like, you know, I did well there a few years before. I live in Bolton, but it was nice coming back to Preston, like, you know, because I think possibly that was my best football I played. Like, as for what I do now, it's just the same, really. Buying and selling clearance lines. What I've done.
Mainly clothes and stuff.
Clothes, footwear, that type of thing. Yeah. So it's, you know, I've been doing that for many years now, like, you know, and luckily it's still pretty busy for me, like, even though I'm 65 now, I still love doing it. In fact, when I buy a parcel, like, of some stuff, it's like scoring a goal, really. I get a big buzz out of it.
You don't
like,
get
you know,
much chanting, though.
not much chanting. I get a lot of telling off, like, you know, my wife tells me off. Stop working a little bit, like, you know, but it keeps me going, like, you know.
We're going to end with that chant now, the Johnny T from Wednesbury. What's it feel like when you hear that?
Well, it was nice, because I believe it started in the pub or something at the Croft where I used to play for many years ago, and some lads told me, said, we started that off, so whether that's true I don't know, but I think it is, like, you know. No, it's nice, you know, and I've been out here in Preston tonight, and Preston fans have been good for me as well as you lads with the Albion fans. Like, it's been great, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thanks very much, Norman. Thank you.
Go Johnny T!
Oh, Johnny T!
From Wednesbury! Oh, Johnny T from Wednesbury! He's got a store at the market! Oh, Johnny T from Wednesbury! Oh, Johnny T!
What do you think of that, Johnny T? You're embarrassed, aren't you?
I'm embarrassed, yeah. I think I'm going to pay everybody a tenner now for that.
That's brilliant. Great, thank you.
Well, there we are. That's John Thomas in the market in the middle of Preston at about 11 o'clock, 11:30 on the night after the match. So We really enjoyed doing that for a number of reasons. Now, that 5-3 thing was interesting because I discovered, of course, it's the last time Albion had scored 5, the last time Albion had won 5-3 since the famous game in December 1978, which I'm sure you two gents will remember. That game, December 78, 5-3.
Yes, I was there. Yeah. There's actually a poem in my book about that as well.
Oh, is that?
Yeah,
the great Manchester United one?
Yeah.
Well, in a minute then, when we go into our next clip, have a look in your book, see if you can find it for us.
Okay.
Perhaps read that one out.
Yeah, of course.
So, yes, indeed. So it was the first time since December 78 that Albion had won 5-3. Now then, that game as well that we were talking about there with Bradford, Brian Talbot scored in that game as well. It was his 100th career goal, and it was a header. And it's not often that Brian Talbot scored a header.
No.
He did score one for Ipswich, I think, in 1978 at High
did
Bid,
he?
but I don't
remember that.
I don't remember.
That was erased from my memory a long time ago.
Don't remember too much about that. But it's funny you should say about things being erased from your memories, Bob, because now this is the moment we've been waiting for.
Oh, is this the quiz?
It's the quiz of the
Okay,
week.
hang on, let me get a bit of paper.
Billy, you know the format, don't you?
Yeah, cheat.
Right, come on, Snarka, your reputation. Snarka versus Bob here. 10 questions on this month in Albion history.
Here we go.
Are we ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go. So just shout out the answers. Billy, keep the score.
I will.
So number 1. In October 1964, who played his first game at the Hawthorns and scored 2 goals when the Albion thrashed the Wolves?
Ray Tracy.
No,
Jeff
another
Astle.
go. Jeff
Yeah.
Astle.
Oh.
Did he show him that? Did he show him the answer then?
I was going to say that.
Number 2, on the 14th of October 78, who scored his 209th league goal for the Albion?
70, Tony Brown?
Tony Brown. Tony Brown.
I thought that was too obvious, and they said down
So number 3, what was the score when the Albion played Coventry at the Hawthorns in October 78?
7-1.
7-1. Ooh, who do you think got that one?
I think one each.
One each for
One
that
each,
one.
yeah,
Go on
yeah.
then. That was the famous 7-1
Chocolate strip.
for the Albion in
Yeah.
the chocolate strip. Billy, they wore this brown outfit for.
They never did
Never
again.
wore it again now.
In fact, brown shirt and they had white shorts to start with, but they were brown at the end to match the tops, I think. Yeah.
Oh,
So
right.
number 4, in October 1959 at Bolton, Bobby Cram made his debut, and he's the uncle of which famous athlete?
Steve Cram.
Steve Cram.
Oh!
Well done.
Shall I give a bonus point because that's athletics as well? Isn't
Yeah,
it?
go on, give him a
2,
bonus
okay.
point. Yeah. Number 5, 35 years ago this month, October 88, it was the worst ever rain and wind for a game, an away game. Many people were there and had wind
Was that
cheaters
Bolton?
and capes, not at Bolton.
Many people here had wind.
Wind,
Bit like the
windy
Preston
conditions.
defence. Bit like the Preston defence on
did
Saturday.
that.
Yeah.
There was a famous game at Swindon that day.
Oh, didn't neither of them get
anybody-
that?
So
No,
nobody got.
Oh.
Well, you should have got that Swindon one.
Yeah, I
'cause you've
should
got
have done
Swindon
that.
connections, haven't you, Billy?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Yep, yeah.
Strange place.
Number 6, in October 1976, Johnny Giles scored, and Ray Tracy, Len Cantallo, and a Brown penalty in a 4-0 victory over which
Man
team?
United.
Manchester
Yeah,
United,
yeah.
indeed. Number 7, why in October 1957 did Albion play Red Army of Moscow?
Opening the floodlights.
Opening of the floodlights. Number 8, the youngest first team player ever was Charlie Wilson, who made his debut in October of 1921. He was the youngest player till 2013. And who became Albion's youngest player then?
2013.
Was it Brown?
It was
Yeah.
Isaiah
Isaiah
Brown.
Brown.
Yes,
Ooh.
give you that one, Isaiah Brown.
Blimey, that's a good one.
Yeah.
You should get 2 for that then.
Yeah, give him a bonus. Give him a bonus.
Give him a bonus.
Give him
Not
a
too many.
bonus.
Not too many
You got
bonuses,
one for
Billy.
athletics.
Okay.
Yeah. Number 9, in October 1969, who made his Albion debut? It's the first of about 626 appearances. Ali Robertson. All right, and there's one question left. So what's the score, Bill?
This is a whitewash.
It's 7 to sort of 4-ish.
7 to sort of 4-ish.
Yeah.
So there could be 5.
So could be 5
points
points riding on this one.
And in October 1994, who replaced Keith Birkinshaw as Albion manager?
Clark?
No. Ooh, we're struggling here. There's lots at stake at this, so I can't give any clues and say his first name was Alan.
Was it Buckley then?
Alan Buckley!
I was thinking Buckley.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Don't seem that long ago.
8-4.
8-4.
To Snarka.
Hey.
So Snarka wins.
Worst defeat.
See if you'd have
Billy's
been.
the worst
I know
defeat.
it is. I couldn't make up 5 points for you there, Bob. I'm sorry about that.
I could be sacked, in the morning.
If you'd have come up with something extra for Steve Crown, I could have probably done it.
In Bob's defence, I am sitting next to Norman.
Oh, he's reading the answer.
Looking over
He's
my
reading
shoulder.
the answer.
Oh dear. So there we are then. So that 1976 game, always remember that, the Manchester United game. It was that match of the day game. I got home really looking forward. I was about 16, 17, I think. I was really looking forward to seeing it on Match of the Day. And I thought the way they'd edited it was appalling. And I actually wrote to Jimmy Hill and complained about the way it had been edited.
Really?
And I did get a letter back
Did you?
from him signed by. I've still got it in the house somewhere. Yeah, it's just the old normal bland, thank you for your letter, the contents have been noted kind of stuff. But I felt I'd made my point on that. So there we are. Tony Brown as well. We mentioned him there early on. Yeah. You've got a poem about him, I think, haven't you, Snarky? Yeah. It's 60 years coming up. Well, 60 years, isn't it now?
I think it's his birthday today. I'm pretty sure it is, yeah.
On the day we were recording this, and of course, 60 years connection now with West Bromwich Albion. Fantastic servant. And this poem, I think, really does him justice.
Yeah, I gave this poem to Tony at an event. We was on him and his wife and his son and daughter-in-law, and to be fair, he had a bit of a tear in his eye when he read it, and he signed it for me, and he asked if he could have one, which I gave him. So I'll just read this one out. It's called, obviously, Tony Bomber Brown. He signed for us at 16, the lad from Oldham Town. Went on to be the legend, Tony Bomber Brown. John Shaw persuaded him to come down for a game. The Bomber scored a hat-trick, he was on his way to fame. 2 years of youth team football for him to own his craft. He got a reserve team debut, it was well worth all the graft. His first team debut followed, he was only still a teen. He scored the equaliser, he was living his football dream. That was the first of many, and honours soon did come. Winning league and FA Cup, a legend he'd become. He got himself an England cap, leading scorer at top flight. When he struck the ball, it was a thunderous sight. No one scored more goals than him, and no one played more games. They even built a statue, the East Stand it proudly frames. He's still around the team, you see him on match days. The greatest Albion player? That's not too high a praise. This team had some great legends, but one man wears the crown. They call him Mr. Albion, that's Tony Bomber Brown.
Yay.
Very good, very good.
Excellent. Now then, one of the things that was mentioned in there was the floodlights. And I've been reading around a little bit about this, and some fantastic stuff in the Sports Argus in the mid-50s about floodlights and whether they should be introduced or not. And I think Wolves were ahead of the Albion because their floodlights were a couple of years and played teams like Honved.
That's right, yeah.
And times like that, and Spartak. And just before, a couple of seasons before the Albion played Red Star of Moscow. And there was a great column by Gil Merrick, as the old Birmingham City goalkeeper. He was one of the Argus columnists at the time. And he actually said that he didn't think floodlights would really catch on, because he wouldn't think people would want to go and see matches of an evening. And he also said in one of his columns that he thought it was almost like asking the players to do overtime. So he wondered whether players would be asking for extra money to play an evening game, which I thought was a bit strange. But you could imagine the agents of today wanting to do that.
It's like a certain American golfer wanting to be paid for playing in the Ryder Cup, isn't it?
Yeah, so...
well, funny enough, I've just read Ronnie Allen's autobiography, and he mentions the floodlights in there, and he says exactly the same things. You don't think they'll catch on, and, it ain't right, you can't see properly and everything. But
the thing is, I mean, before the floodlights, I mean, I can remember going to see an Albion FA Cup replay against Blackpool. And, I mean, these days you couldn't do it, but my dad took me out of school. It was a Wednesday. And lunchtime, when I came out of school, Dad sort of picked me up and we went straight up to the Albion ground because he wanted me to see Stanley Matthews. And there was also a replay against Doncaster Rovers as well. And it was a Wednesday afternoon. And the place was heaving. It was packed because the shops all shut on a Wednesday afternoon. It was half-day closing.
It did, yeah.
And that's why they were getting all the big fans. That's why they're getting all the fans in and everything. And people could take off time off work and whatever. So it's interesting, really. If it had been, I mean, if it had fallen flat, what the hell would we be doing now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the Premier Division would have been 6 teams to get all the fixtures in.
Yeah.
You know, but no, I mean, I mean, it's an interesting one. I was talking to you. You talking to me about the floodlights, and that coverage in the Radio Times. I mean, that's fun. That's something incredible. That is. You just tell me about that.
Yeah, that particular match, it was such a feature, and it was caused so much excitement in the football world that the BBC decided that they'd actually screen the game. So it must have been one of the first floodlit matches. But they showed the last hour. For some reason, they didn't show the first hour. So they showed the last 15 minutes live, then the whole of the second half.
Perhaps they hadn't switched them on then.
So it's a bit of time to get the lights warmed
Did
up.
they, you know, when they switch them on about 3 o'clock in the afternoon to warm them up, did they used to do that when they first started, or just switch them on when the game was ready to start?
I wouldn't really know.
No?
I think I wouldn't.
I can't remember when I used to go, whether they switched them on when you got there.
They
Because
always
now,
seemed to be on when you was walking up there.
Yeah.
Oh, was they?
Yeah. It was always a big thing, wasn't it? Especially when you were kids walking up and seeing the lights of a night time. And I always think the atmosphere under the lights is so much better than it is during the day.
Just a quick about the floodlights. I always remember going to Charlton with Jeff Wright, with Albion were playing at Charlton. And Jeff, you know, if we couldn't find the ground, he always used to say, look out the window and see if you can see the floodlights. And that was always the key. And we was going around, and we were at Charlton, and I can't see no floodlights here, Jeff. I said, are you sure we're in the right place apart in London? And he said, yeah. He said, we're in the right place. He said, just keep looking out for the floodlights. Anyway, we were going along the street, and we saw a lad and his dad with red and white scarves, Charlton fans. Can you tell us where the ground is, please? We'll take you. And he says, yes, OK, then. I knew then why we didn't see the floodlights, because the ground's called the Valley. Floodlights were down here.
Oh, down here. Oh, well, yeah.
They were up in the sky. That was down there.
I'll take a dim view of things like that. Now, we've got a great story. I mean, it's difficult to get people that can remember actually being there on that particular night. But, of course, we've managed to find one, and it's a gent that we all know well, or 4 of us know well down here, is Harry Taylor. He claims he's 49. But he's got to be a bit more than 49, hasn't he? That's his IQ. Ooh, did you hear that? You said that's his IQ. Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
Wait till I see him down the bonk walking about.
Well, anyway, these are Harry's memories of the floodlights and that game against the Red Army of Moscow. Harry, you were there in that game in October 1957, and when it was the floodlights game against the Russian army.
Yes, I was, mate. It was Albion actually played Chelsea under the floodlights before on the month before, like more or less, try them out, I suppose. But the official opening was against the Russian army, and what a great night that was. When I say great night, not weather-wise, it was absolutely pouring down the rain, and I remember getting really soaked. I was 16 years old. I hadn't got the brains to be undercover. I suppose I was standing out in the open in the summer again. But the biggest thing about it, which to me was actually the floodlights, because to tell anyone now, especially some of the younger supporters who've been brought up in it, it's nothing to them. But it was absolutely magic then to come to a football game on a dark, dismal, horrible night, and you walked in and it was daylight. The place was all lit up. It was just an absolutely fantastic feeling, unique, and I said, there was nearly 53,000 here on a really horrible night to watch it. And then when the match ended and you actually forgot that it was night, you came out of the stadium and you're back in the pitch black in the street again. So it was, that was, to me, that was just a magic time. It sticks in my mind such a lot.
I suppose there was lots of speculation beforehand about whether floodlights would work or how it would affect the players and all sorts like that, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think there was. I obviously don't remember too much about it. I do remember that the Wolves had the floodlights for 2 or 3 years before the Albion, and they played some big matches up there, against Russia and Honved. But that was a great night, and the scoring was Albion won 6-5. And my favourite, Ronnie Allen, he scored a penalty, but he also missed one. He took one with his left foot and one with his right foot. And if I remember correctly, I think he hit the post with his left foot, but I'm not really sure about that. But yeah, fantastic night. And as I said, it was the thought of never been to a match before when the floodlights, which is it's the run of the mill now, isn't it?
Yeah, and I suppose later in the year, the 3:00 kickoffs games as well would start to use the floodlights.
Yes, of course.
Whereas beforehand, didn't some of the games have to kick for a little bit earlier?
They did. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they'd stick them on I think they'd stick them on at half time or something like. I don't think they. I mean, today they just put them on all day, don't they? Yeah. But then, yeah. But I don't know if Albion did the same. I remember when the Wolves played Honved, I think they had special shirts, like a bit fluorescent, to light up. The Wolves did.
Really?
And also, this match was on the TV, I think, or the second half was. Mm-hmm. I remember my dad seeing it at home, like. But I don't know if Albion did the same, but I remember the Wolves did that. They had these special shirts that would show up under the floodlights more. Mm-hmm. But it was really sticks in my mind. What a great night it was.
And wasn't it the game as well when David Burnside did his juggling?
Yes, he did. Yeah. Good, you reminded me of that. Yes, he did. Yeah, he came on at half time. There was it used to be I think it was a 10-minute break then, not 15 minutes.
Yeah, no. For people who are not familiar with David Burnside, he was a good young player at the time, but he was famous for juggling the ball, wasn't he?
Correct. He was. He came out in chucking it down the rain, really windy. He kicked the ball up in the air, I remember, pretty high, catch it on the back of his neck, and then he ran the length of the pitch on his brow, and then he'd do all the ball juggling with his feet, and I don't think the ball ever touched the floor. I think in the 10 minutes he was doing it, which was amazing. So there you go.
That's Harry Taylor there talking about the floodlights and when they were switched on at the Hawthorns in October 1957, which was 6 months or so before I was born, Harry. So thanks for the memories there. It's always good to get these memories from people who were born before.
Yeah, especially Harry. He remembers the ground being opening, I think. Harry does. Is that
the Noah's Ark stand, wasn't it, in 1904? I'm sure it was he that burnt it down, wasn't it?
No, I think he built it, to be fair.
Anyway, now another event from that particular month in October 1957 was the very last time that the Busby Babes played at the Hawthorns before the infamous air crash of February 1958. And Jim Sanders was the Albion goalkeeper on that occasion, and he's fondly remembered by Alan Cleverley and again with Harry Taylor, who've been talking about their memories of that game with the Busby Babes in October 1957, again which the Albion won by 4-3.
And he was a real interesting character. What a Dickie Bowen also did.
He was a proper character, Cockney, very, very cheerful Cockney character.
Yeah.
As you say, wore a Dickie Bowen.
Yes,
came up here in 47 because he couldn't get into the Charlton side because Sam Bartram, the great legendary goalkeeper for Charlton, well, obviously he couldn't get him out the side, so he came up here and vied with Norman for the goalkeeping position. At the time, Norman was playing a bit better than Jim,
yes.
But of course, with the tragic accident up at Sunderland, Jim got back into the side for the cup final.
Yeah.
Now, Jim went on actually to be quite a decent goalkeeper, and I think it was in season 58 that he saved 8 out of 11 penalties. The greatest being against Manchester United's Busby Babes with Charlton as a young lad inside, Tommy Taylor at centre forward. And he saved a penalty in the last minute, and we won 4-3, which was a wonderful victory over a wonderful team, actually. And that was the last time the Busby Babes actually played at the Hawthorns before the tragic accident in the following February.
Wow. It's great memories to have.
Well, it is. I mean, to this day, Tommy Taylor scored the first goal. He scored at the Smerick end, and I've never seen anybody jump that high in a football match. And you can cut Jeff Astle or Derek Kevin and all that, but his great mate, the Dickie Bird, the umpire, was Tommy Taylor's great mate.
Yeah.
And he always reckoned when he went to knock his back gate, Tommy Taylor would jump the gate. And it was 6 foot high.
Yeah.
You know, and the world high jump record wasn't much above 6 foot back in the 50s. You know, he's an incredible character.
Remind me, Alan, I don't think Taylor wasn't actually one of the Busby Babes. He was actually bought, wasn't he?
They bought from Barnsley for £29,999.
Good God, mate, he knows how much.
Well, Matt Busby refused to pay 30,000 quid. Something like that. So the story went anyway, it was... And Bobby Charlton, I always remember because he had a little bit of a reputation, Bobby Charlton, in the 50s for a diving. So it's not something new.
Yeah.
But, But in those days, refs didn't give penalties for anything unless you died.
Yeah, so some good memories there from October 1957. Now, Bob, you've got some interesting facts and figures about the Albion goalkeepers, with Jim Sanders in particular.
Yeah. Just going on to that game though, Norm, the biggest regret in my life was that my dad wouldn't let me go. I was all going to with my mates, and he was a bit worried about the crowd crush that would have been at the Hawthorns. So I couldn't go. I mean, I remember people telling me from school that they'd gone, and it was the time when they were passing the kids down over the shoulders and over the heads so they could get to the front, because basically they'd never see anything. And I've just had a quick look. There was 52,000 at the Albion that day.
Blimey.
So you can imagine what the crush would have been like. So in a way, my dad was probably right. But it's a big regret of mine that that was the only chance I would have ever had of seeing Duncan Edwards play, and I missed it. But now it's interesting about Jimmy Sanders, because he was invalided out of the RAF. He was a pilot gunner, and he got shot down. And his injuries were so severe that apparently the doctors said, "You'll never play football again." But he said, "Nonsense, I'm going to start playing." And he got himself back to full fitness. He joined the Albion as an amateur. He played first time as he was a guest. He started with Charlton. And I think Sam Bartram at the time, who was the legend of Charlton, still is, almost said to him, "I should look for another club if I was you, Jim, because I'm never leaving." So he guested during the war for Chelsea, came to the Albion, and then I think 4 days after he made his debut, he signed professional forms. But it's interesting, that you see the goalkeepers now. I mean, before Jim came into the side, Norman Heath was the number one goalkeeper at the Albion. Then he had that serious injury, and then that led Jim going into the first team into the cup final year in 1954. And I've just been looking back through some records, and the goalkeepers are very few and far between. There was when Jim was number one, a bloke by the name of Freddie Brown was number two, and Fred would play in the reserves and whatever. And that was how it was until about 58, 59. And then Clive Jackman came along, and both Fred Brown and Jim Sanders had disappeared from the scene. So then it was Clive Jackman who came in as the number one. Later on in the season, Ray Potter took over, and they alternated all the time. 60-61, Ray Potter was the number one until they signed Jock Wallace from Rangers. Jock Wallace then became number one. And then his number two the following season was a guy by the name of Tony Millington, who got into the first team and actually played for Wales. Then you've got there was Millington, and then Ray Potter came back onto the scene, so he was back into the side, and then you got Ray Potter, you got Ricky Shepherd. You'd also got Clive Jackman who'd come in as well, you know. So it's incredible, really, to see all these goalkeepers who alternated. That because they were injured.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so you got John Osborne, who was Rick Shepherd was Ray Potter's deputy, and then John Osborne came in. Still, Rick Shepherd was the deputy, and then after that it was Jimmy Coombs, and then everybody came in. Then, but it was interesting, you know, that what Jimmy Sanders actually went through, and the famous, every time you saw the cup final picture on magazines or whatever, and even in the radio times when they were looking at the FA Cup finals, there was always that one picture they showed, and that was Jim Sanders couldn't watch Ronnie Allen take that penalty.
Oh, right.
And they said he was praying at the goalpost.
Yeah.
And another little inside of that, when I spoke to Ronnie Allen years and years later, I said to him, you know, about the penalty, and I said, do you think the goalkeeper moved? And he said he did.
Oh, right.
And I said, well, what would happen? He said, as I was going back to the centre spot, the referee came up to him and said, Ronnie, if you'd have saved it, you'd have took it again.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So,
well,
fascinating.
So there we are. Fascinating indeed. Yeah. Now, equally fascinating, we mentioned earlier about the Albion's 5-3 game at Manchester United, and Snarka said he'd got a poem in his book.
Oh.
And he's had a rummage.
He's had a rummage.
He's had a rummage.
Yeah.
And here we go.
To be fair, I've seen a lot of Albion games, as probably we all have here. And to me, this is still the greatest game of football I've ever seen. Off both sides, really. I mean, it was end to end, but Albion on that day was unbelievable. So I've done this one. It's in the book, and it's called The Greatest Game. Manchester, a cold and wintry night on a Saturday. To see the greatest game of football I've seen the Albion play. We led the league that day, United down at 10th. We were on a roll that month, attacking was our strength. Beaten Borough, Wolves and Arsenal and Valencia in the cup. The game kicked off in swirling snow, United went one up. Bomber Brown pulled it back and Tello put us in front. The game edged to and fro, United in the hunt. Big McQueenie equalised, McElroy restored their lead. Just before half-time, the Bomber got us back to speed. Monkey Chanks ran round the ground for the 3 degrees that day. It was now their time to shine and make the bigots pay. Laurie skipping round tackles, Big Cyril came alive. Laurie got his goal and Cyril made it 5. The whistle went, a roar went up, the game had run its course. We strolled back to our coaches, knowing Albion were a force. Us lucky ones behind that goal who saw the Albion team all agreed with Brian Clough, the greatest game we'd ever seen.
Yeah, it was as well. Absolutely brilliant.
It was really good.
Great game. Bit
Great
cold.
Yeah, it was. Yep.
And I never saw it because I was on strike.
You got to get your priorities right.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the circumstances of that then? How did that come about? What was
We've
the strike about?
we've been called out on strike. The NUJ had called us out, and so I couldn't get to the Man United. But I mean, I've watched it. I mean, and when people say, you know, the greatest games, that one always comes up. But I still think the best. The one I saw, I mean, I couldn't. Albion's 5-3 was brilliant, and you know, if I'd have been there, it would have been the best game I'd ever seen. But the best game I'd ever seen was when they played Valencia.
Oh yeah.
In Valencia.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, no doubt, in a future programme. Now, before we go, we've got a bit of time to listen to one more ex-player that we featured in the previous programme, actually, Wayne Fereday. We ran out of time on part of his interview, so he's a little bit more of Wayne, a good local lad, talking about his England under-21 caps that he got.
I think 2-3 of them were in the 84-85 European Championships. There wasn't the most glamorous game. One was. The others, I think I played Finland. I think I played Turkey twice, home and away. Finland. But the one game, I suppose, that is going to stick out for me was we played against Italy. It wasn't the most glamorous surroundings. It was Swindon, county ground, Swindon. Yeah. Why it was there, I don't know, but it was. But when I look back and I look at, because I keep a lot of programs and I keep a lot of stuff. When I look back and I look through the Italian side, and I went down the list and it had got Walter Zenga, Roberto Donadoni, Gianluca Vialli, Roberto Mancini, and you look and you think, well, wait a bit, I was playing against these guys for England under 21s. Okay, it was under 21s, but so yeah, that was probably the main game that stuck out for me. But playing for England anyway, at any level, it was brilliant, because when we played the Turkeys, when we played the away games, we'd travel with the full squad, which was Bobby Robson, bless his soul, and Brian Robson and Gary Lineker and all these guys we used to travel with. So we'd play our game the night before, and then we'd watch their game the night after. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't quite make the full squad, but yeah, I had a few, like say 5 or 6, whatever it was, under 21 caps.
Who else was in the England's squads with you that time?
Looking back at pictures I've got on my phone, which remind me, David Seaman, my old QPR teammate, Paul Parker, and then looking at, I think it's one of the games in Turkey, that was the side, David Seaman, Paul Parker, Everton, Trevor Stephen, Gary Stevens, Paul Bracewell, Danny Wallace, Southampton, trying to think who else, Ian Butterworth, Norwich Forest, Chris Fairclough, Forest centre half. So there was some proper players, proper players. So yeah, that was, thinking of that team now that I've got on my phone, it was all those guys. So we had some good players.
Some good players indeed, and many good players, of course, over the years. None more so than the famous Jeff Astle, who we mentioned earlier in the programme. And Snarka, he was one of your heroes, wasn't he, growing up?
Yeah, by far. To be fair, I've seen a lot of great players, and there's probably a lot more players more skillful than him. But to me, Astle was by far the greatest I'd ever seen. Maybe because of my age, maybe because he lived in the next street to me. And his kids used to wait on the corner till he came down the street, like, you know what I mean? But to me, he's just West Bromwich Albion, Astle is to me.
There's something about a player like Wayne Fereday as well. Good examples, aren't they, Bob, of local players that have done well, and people always like their local players who've got the affinity to the club and want to stay with the club to do well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in a future programme, we're going to feature somebody who a lot of Albion fans wouldn't know who the hell he is. You go to America, and the guy is a king, and that's Dave Butler.
David Butler, yeah.
I mean, he didn't make the Albion first team. He played a lot of reserve games, and I saw a lot of those games in the reserves in the A team, because at the time I was working for the Midland Chronicle, and I was helping with the Albion. They approached me in the Albion programme to do the second and third team reports. So that's what I did. So I used to see the reserve teams, and I used to see the Saturday morning teams, you know, the intermediate league at Spring Road.
Yeah, brilliant. Yep. Now then, so we mentioned Jeff then. So how about your poem then, Snarka?
Okay then, mate. Obviously, it's called Astle is the King. The year was 1964 when a striker we did sign to lead West Bromwich Albion's famous forward line. Right off from the off, he won the hearts of every single fan. Not just a great player, but a diamond of a man. His many goals and friendly way, his name we would soon sing. The song rang from the Brummie Road, Astle is the King. In 68 we won the cup, in every round he scored. Even in the final, this man he was adored. The first to score a Wembley, FA and League Cup final goal, gaining caps for England, was his proudest role. He led the first division, in goals he scored one year. All the top defenders, his name they sure did fear. The goals per game he scored for us was 1 in every 2. In all those games he played, he was Albion through and through. Whether mixing with the famous or the working class, he treated everyone the same, he would never be that crass. From bridges to his special gates, this man we all revere. He even sang on TV, nothing ever held no fear. The joy he brought still venerates around our famous ground, although it's tinged with sorrow now as he's not around. We're privileged that we saw this man put on our famous top. In our hearts our love for him I know will never stop. We've had some famous players and legends of the game, but we've only ever had one king, and Astle is his name.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, true. Excellent stuff there.
I say to me, he was the guy, and I'm quite friendly with his family now as well. So,
yeah.
Oh yeah,
marvellous, brilliant.
I still think that that promo they did with his grandson, it's got to be the best ever.
Yeah. Just explain that to people.
Well, it was about the launching the shirt, wasn't it, for the season, and there's a lot of talk about what was it going to be like and what have you. And I don't know who put it together, but whoever he did that day, if there's an Oscar for pre-adverts, then that should be in the line forward.
Oh.
He was so emotional.
Yeah.
It was, and he brought back so many memories to a lot of people.
So what was the format then?
It was basically his grandson, obviously looking at old pictures and reports, and then he's put on this shirt and he walks out of the Albion tunnel, and they've put a silhouette, and it's just like Jeff.
Oh right.
Holding his hand.
Yeah. Oh well.
And he was so joking, and I mean, if anything sold the shirt, it was that. I mean, my son wanted an Albion shirt for his birthday, and I said, "You can have your name," and he said, "No, number 9, Astle." And he's, and a lot of people bought the shirt
because of that.
And they had an Astle number 9 put on the back. No kid's name, no sort of nickname or whatever, and a number. Like me, I've got a couple of Albion shirts with 70 on it when I was 70, but everybody wanted that shirt, and it was so emotional.
Yep, certainly was. Yep. Well, unfortunately, that's about all we've got time for in this programme. It's gone really quick, hasn't it?
Taz.
Unbelievable.
Taz again, really interesting.
Once you start talking about football, there's no stopping it, is there? It's been really great having you.
I'd hate to be on a table with you lot in the pub.
Well, good job you weren't with us in Preston last Saturday night, then, that's all I can say.
No, I heard enough of my son-in-law shouting through the wall. Yeah, I did.
So there we are then. That's it from this edition of the Throstle Club, which you'll be able to hear at various times on Black Country Radio Xtra, on Black Country Radio, and later on my website on tntnews.co.uk, and you can always find it on Spotify as well, which we'll put on Facebook. So that's about it. So thanks very much for joining us, Snarka.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Norm. Thank you.
Been really good, Snarka. Those poems are brilliant, mate.
I'm glad you
really
enjoyed
good.
it, mate.
Really
Thank
good.
you.
This is the Throstle Club with Norman Bartlam and Bob Downing.